Dr. Sarah Chen pressed her face closer to the viewing screen, her breath fogging the glass as she stared at the impossible sight before her. The alien artifact floated in the sterile white chamber like a piece of crystallized starlight, its surface covered in intricate symbols that seemed to shift and dance when she wasn't looking directly at them. "How long have your people been trying to decode this?" Sarah asked, turning to face the towering figure of Ambassador Kethvar. The Zephyrian diplomat's forearms moved in what she had learned was their equivalent of a shrug. 700 of your Earth years, Kethvar replied, his translator rendering his melodic alien speech into flat English. Every major civilization in the Galactic Council has attempted to understand these markings. The Korathi mathematicians spent 2 centuries on it. The Vrex philosophers dedicated their greatest minds for a generation. Even the ethereal collective, with their quantum consciousness abilities, declared it beyond comprehension. Sarah nodded slowly, but her eyes remained fixed on the artifact. It was roughly the size of a football, though its shape defied easy description. Sometimes it appeared spherical, other times cubic, and occasionally it seemed to exist in more dimensions than her 3-dimensional vision could process. The script covering its surface was equally bewildering. Geometric patterns interwoven with flowing curves that suggested both mathematical precision and organic growth. The Council designated it as an ancient impossible script, continued Kethvar, his tone carrying the weight of official proclamation. A relic from a civilization so advanced that their written language transcends our ability to comprehend. It has been studied by over 40 species, each bringing their unique perspective and cognitive abilities to bear upon it. Dr. Martinez, Sarah's colleague and the head of Earth's Xenolinguistics department, stepped forward. "And you're telling us that every single one of these species, civilizations that have mastered faster than light travel, quantum communication, and dimensional manipulation, has failed to make any progress whatsoever?" The Zephyrian's secondary arms twitched in what Sarah recognized as mild amusement. "Not merely failed, Dr. Martinez. The script actively resists comprehension. Observers report headaches, disorientation, and in some cases, temporary cognitive dysfunction when attempting prolonged study. The Mentari telepaths suffered complete neural feedback loops. 3 of their scholars required extensive psychological rehabilitation." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had volunteered for this mission specifically because of her work in computational linguistics and pattern recognition. But the warnings were becoming increasingly ominous. Still, something about the script called to her. Where others saw chaos and impossibility, she sensed an underlying structure. Like a melody played in a key, her mind was only just beginning to recognize. "What makes this artifact so special anyway?" she asked. "I mean, beyond the obvious mystery of the script itself." Ambassador Kethvar's primary eyes dimmed, their equivalent of taking a deep breath. The artifact was discovered at the center of a massive technological complex. On the dead world of Xerion Prime, the entire planet appears to have been converted into a single, vast machine of unknown purpose. This object was found floating at the exact geometric center of the construct, surrounded by what can only be described as a perfect sphere of empty space. "Perfect how?" Dr. Martinez interjected. "Perfect in the truest sense," Kethvar replied. "No gravitational anomalies. No electromagnetic radiation. No quantum fluctuations. Nothing. Our instruments detected literally nothing within a kilometer radius of the artifact until we extracted it from its position. The moment we removed it, the entire planetary construct began to decay at an exponential rate." Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "You're saying this thing was the key to maintaining an entire planet-sized machine?" "We believe so. More importantly, we believe the script contains the operating instructions, the purpose, and potentially the location of whoever or whatever built it. The implications for galactic civilization are..." Kethvar paused, searching for the right words. "Transformative." The 3 humans exchanged glances. Dr. Rodriguez, their team's cognitive psychologist, spoke for the first time since entering the facility. "And you want us to attempt what 40 other species have failed to do? What makes you think human cognition is somehow special enough to succeed where others haven't?" Kethvar's translator was silent for a long moment, and Sarah could see the alien's 4 eyes focusing and unfocusing as he considered his response. Humans are unique among sapient species. Your cognitive patterns are chaotic, unpredictable. Most civilizations develop along logical, structured, evolutionary paths. Your species appears to have developed pattern recognition and linguistic abilities through what can only be called organized chaos. You see connections where others see random noise. You find meaning in paradox. You're saying we're too stupid to know when we should give up? Dr. Martinez asked with a wry smile. I am saying, Kethvar replied with what might have been alien humor, that your species has a remarkable talent for solving problems by approaching them from directions no one else would consider. You have also demonstrated an unusual resistance to cognitive hazards that would incapacitate other species. Sarah stepped closer to the viewing window. The script seemed to pulse gently, as if responding to her proximity. What kind of cognitive hazards are we talking about exactly? Pattern lock, Dr. Rodriguez answered before Kethvar could respond. I've been reviewing the Council's research data. Most species that study the script get trapped in recursive thinking loops. They become obsessed with finding a logical structure and can't break free from failed approaches. It's like intellectual quicksand. Humans, however, Kethvar added, seem to possess an unusual ability to abandon failed approaches and try something completely different. Your species calls it thinking outside the box, I believe. Sarah pressed her hand against the viewing window. The script definitely seemed to be reacting to her presence now. The symbols shifting more rapidly, creating new patterns that dissolved and reformed like frost on a window. How dangerous is this really? I mean, worst-case scenario? The Korathi team leader is still in psychiatric care, Kethvar admitted. But that was after 6 months of continuous exposure. We propose much shorter sessions with extensive monitoring. Dr. Martinez walked over to join Sarah at the window. Look at that, he murmured. It's definitely responding to us. The patterns are becoming more complex, more organized? Sarah nodded, unable to take her eyes off the artifact. The script was beautiful, in a way that defied description. It reminded her of watching clouds form and reform in a time-lapse video, or the way frost crystals grew across glass, but with an underlying intentionality that suggested deep intelligence. I want to try, she said quietly. Sarah, Dr. Rodriguez warned. We don't even know what we're risking here. But we know what we're missing, Sarah replied, turning to face her colleagues. A chance to understand something that could revolutionize our understanding of the universe. Every great discovery involves risk. Kethvar's translator crackled to life. If you are determined to proceed, we have prepared a controlled environment with full monitoring capabilities. You would observe the script through high-resolution displays, with immediate disconnection possible if any adverse effects are detected. Sarah looked back at the artifact one more time. The script had settled into a slow, hypnotic rhythm that seemed almost like breathing. When can we start? Immediately, if you wish, Kethvar replied. Though I should warn you that many observers report the script appears to be aware of being studied. It may react unpredictably to your attention. As if responding to his words, the symbols on the artifact suddenly flared with brilliant light, cycling through colors that had no names in any language Sarah knew. Then, just as quickly, they returned to their gentle, steady, pulsing. Well, Dr. Martinez said with a nervous laugh. I think it just said hello. Sarah smiled, feeling a mixture of excitement and terror that reminded her of standing at the edge of a high diving board as a child. Then, let's not keep it waiting. The observation chamber they led her to was impressive in its sophisticated simplicity. A single chair faced a wall-sized display screen, surrounded by monitoring equipment that hummed quietly in the background. Cables and sensors attached to a lightweight headset would monitor her brain activity, stress levels, and dozens of other physiological markers. The display will show the script at various magnification levels, explained Dr. Yith, the Korathi scientist who served as the project's technical coordinator. Her insectoid features were difficult for Sarah to read, but her translated voice conveyed professional concern. We recommend beginning with brief exposures, no more than 30 seconds, and gradually increasing duration as tolerance is established. Sarah settled into the chair and allowed the technicians to attach the monitoring equipment. The headset was surprisingly comfortable, and the various sensors felt no more intrusive than a medical examination. "What am I looking for exactly?" "Patterns, doctor," Yith replied. "Any sense of structure, repetition, or logical organization. Previous observers have reported seeing mathematical sequences, linguistic constructions, musical notations, artistic compositions, and architectural blueprints. The script appears to show different viewers, different aspects of itself. Like it's adapting to our individual cognitive patterns?" Sarah asked. "Precisely, which is what makes it so dangerous. It seems to find the specific pattern recognition pathways that each observer uses most heavily, then exploits them." Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom from the observation booth. "Remember, Sarah, if you start feeling disoriented or obsessed, tell us immediately. Don't try to push through it." Sarah nodded and looked up at the blank display screen. "I'm ready." The screen flickered to life, showing the artifact in perfect detail. The script covering its surface was even more complex than she had imagined. What had appeared as simple symbols from a distance revealed themselves to be intricate constructions, each character composed of smaller elements that were themselves made up of even tinier components. At first, Sarah simply let her eyes wander across the display, taking in the overall impression without trying to focus on any particular element. The script flowed across the artifact's surface like living text, reorganizing itself constantly, while maintaining an underlying consistency that suggested deep structure. Then she began to notice something odd. The more she looked at the script, the more familiar it seemed. Not in the sense that she recognized any specific symbols, but in the way it felt to read it. It reminded her of something, though she couldn't quite place what. "Interesting," she murmured, leaning forward slightly. "There's something about the rhythm of it." "What kind of rhythm, doctor?" Yith's voice asked through the intercom. Sarah frowned, trying to articulate the sensation. "It's like, have you ever learned a new language and reached that point where you can feel the grammar even before you understand it? Like your brain recognizes that there are rules and patterns even though you can't consciously identify them yet?" "Several observers have reported similar sensations," Dr. Yith confirmed, though most found the feeling overwhelming after extended exposure. But Sarah wasn't finding it overwhelming. If anything, she was finding it oddly comforting. The script seemed to be settling into patterns that felt almost natural, as if her brain was unconsciously adapting to its strange logic. "Can you increase the magnification?" she asked. "I want to see the smaller components more clearly." The image zoomed in, revealing layers of detail that took her breath away. Each symbol was a masterwork of complexity, containing what appeared to be entire sublanguages of smaller marks and notations. But rather than feeling lost in the intricacy, Sarah found herself beginning to see connections. "Oh," she whispered, her eyes widening. "Oh, I think I see what you are." Sarah's heart began to race as the revelation crystallized in her mind. The monitoring equipment in the observation booth started beeping frantically, but she barely heard it. Her entire focus was consumed by the magnificent complexity unfolding before her eyes. "Dr. Chen, your neural activity is spiking dramatically." Dr. Rodriguez's worried voice crackled through the intercom. "We're seeing patterns we've never recorded before." "It's not dangerous," Sarah said without taking her eyes off the screen. "It's beautiful. It's so incredibly beautiful." The script wasn't just writing in the conventional sense. It was a living document that adapted and evolved as it was being read. Each symbol contained multiple layers of meaning that revealed themselves based on the reader's cognitive approach. It was like having a conversation with text itself. "What are you seeing, Sarah?" Dr. Yith asked urgently. "Your brain patterns are unlike anything we've recorded from previous subjects." Sarah struggled to find words for what she was experiencing. "It's not one language," she said slowly. "It's a meta-language, a way of writing that can express any concept in any possible linguistic framework." The symbols aren't fixed meanings. They're functional placeholders that activate different semantic pathways, depending on how you approach them. She could hear murmured discussions in the observation booth. But the voices seemed distant and unimportant. The script was teaching itself to her, showing her how to read it by demonstrating its own logic. It was like learning to read all over again, but at an accelerated pace that should have been impossible. The reason other species couldn't understand it, Sarah continued, her voice growing more confident, is that they were trying to impose their own linguistic structures on it. But this script doesn't follow any single species' cognitive patterns. It's designed to work with any form of sapient thought. That would be, theoretically, impossible, Dr. Yith protested. No single writing system could accommodate the cognitive diversity of 40 different species. Not impossible, Sarah corrected, finally looking up from the screen. Just really, really clever. Watch this. She turned back to the display and focused her attention on a cluster of symbols in the upper left quadrant. Immediately, those symbols began to shift and reorganize themselves, transforming from the flowing alien script into something that looked remarkably like mathematical notation. Mathematics, she said. Because that's how I'm approaching this section. I'm thinking about it analytically, so it's showing me analytical content. She shifted her mental focus, trying to approach the same symbols from an artistic perspective. The mathematical notation dissolved and reformed into something that looked like musical composition, with flowing lines and rhythmic patterns that suggested melody and harmony. Incredible, Dr. Martinez whispered over the intercom. It's responding to your cognitive state in real time. More than responding, Sarah said, feeling a grin spread across her face. It's teaching me how to read it. Each time I successfully decode a section, it shows me more complex applications of the same principles. It's like having the most patient teacher in the universe. She focused on another section of the script, this time approaching it with pure curiosity, rather than any specific analytical framework. The symbols shimmered and became something entirely different. Pictographs that told a story, but a story that changed depending on how she interpreted the visual metaphors. The reason other species got trapped in cognitive loops, Sarah explained, her excitement growing, is that they tried to find one correct way to read it. But there is no single correct way. The script is designed to be read differently by every individual consciousness that encounters it. But that would mean, Dr. Yith began, that whoever wrote this had a deeper understanding of consciousness itself than any species we've ever encountered, Sarah finished. They understood that intelligence isn't just about processing power or logical thinking. They understood that consciousness is fundamentally about perspective, about the unique way each mind organizes and interprets reality. Sarah focused on the central portion of the script, where the symbols were densest and most complex. This section seemed to be the core of whatever message the artifact contained. As she concentrated on it, the symbols began to arrange themselves into something that looked almost like a user interface. Menus and options, and branching pathways that suggested choices to be made. It's interactive, she breathed. The script isn't just information storage. It's a functional interface. The whole artifact is some kind of control system. The implications hit her like a lightning bolt. If this was a control system, and if the artifact had been at the center of a planet-wide machine, then she was looking at the operating manual for technology beyond their wildest dreams. Sarah, Dr. Rodriguez's voice was tense with concern. Your vitals are all over the place. Your brain is showing activity patterns we've never seen in human subjects. We need to— No, Sarah interrupted sharply. Don't stop me now. I'm starting to understand what this really is. She focused more intently on the interface elements, trying to understand their function. As her comprehension grew, the symbols became more responsive, highlighting different options and showing her branching pathways of possibility. It was like learning to use the most sophisticated computer program ever created, except the program was teaching itself to her as she explored it. The planet machine, she said suddenly. This isn't just the control system for what they built on Zirion Prime. This is a construction interface. The whole planet was just a manufacturing facility, and this artifact is the blueprint controller for whatever they were making there. What were they making? Kethvar's voice joined the conversation from the observation booth. Sarah delved deeper into the interface, following pathways that revealed increasingly complex diagrams and specifications. What she saw made her gasp. Ships, she whispered. They were building ships. But not like anything we've ever imagined. These aren't vessels for traveling through space. They're for traveling between dimensions. Between realities. The script was showing her technical diagrams now, engineering specifications that her human mind shouldn't have been able to comprehend, but somehow she could understand them. As if the artifact was translating advanced physics into concepts her consciousness could grasp. The civilization that built this wasn't from our universe, she continued, her voice filled with awe. They were interdimensional travelers. The whole planet was a shipyard for building vehicles that could cross between different planes of existence. That's impossible, Dr. Yith stammered. Interdimensional travel is purely theoretical. The energy requirements alone, not impossible, Sarah corrected, studying the energy diagrams the script was showing her. Just really expensive. They were harvesting power from quantum fluctuations in the dimensional barriers themselves. The planet machine was essentially a reality engine, converting the fundamental forces of existence into usable energy. She could feel her understanding expanding as the script revealed more of its secrets. The interface was showing her operational parameters now. Safety protocols. And most importantly, activation sequences. Her heart began to pound as she realized what she was looking at. Oh my God, she whispered. The machine isn't dead. It's just dormant. They built in safety protocols that shut everything down if the control artifact was removed from its position. But the shutdown wasn't permanent. It was just a protective measure. Are you saying the artifact could reactivate the planetary construct? Kethvar asked, his translated voice tight with excitement and apprehension. Sarah navigated deeper into the control interface, her human intuition guiding her through options and menus that seemed to respond to her intentions rather than her conscious commands. The script was showing her activation sequences now, step-by-step procedures for bringing the reality engine back online. Not just reactivate it, she said, her voice trembling with the magnitude of the discovery. I can control it. The script is showing me how to operate the whole system. I can build ships that travel between dimensions. I can harvest energy from the quantum foam that underlies reality itself. I can. She stopped, her breath catching as the true scope of the technology revealed itself. What is it, Sarah? Dr. Martinez asked urgently. I can modify the dimensional barriers, she said slowly. Not just travel between realities. I can actually alter the fundamental structure of space-time itself. This technology could reshape the laws of physics in local regions of the universe. The observation booth fell silent as the implications sank in. Sarah could practically feel the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone present. They were looking at technology that could make them gods among the stars, or destroy everything they had ever known. Sarah, Dr. Rodriguez said carefully, I need you to slowly disengage from the interface. Your brain patterns are showing signs of integration with the artifact's systems. We don't know what that could do to your consciousness. But Sarah was no longer fully listening to the voices from the observation booth. The script was showing her something new. A section of the interface she hadn't seen before. Personal logs, she realized. Messages left behind by the civilization that had built this incredible technology. As she focused on these new symbols, they transformed into something that wasn't quite text, and wasn't quite images, but somehow conveyed meaning more directly than either. She was seeing the thoughts and memories of the artifact's creators, experiencing their history as if she had lived it herself. The revelations that flooded her mind were staggering. The builders hadn't been a single species. They had been a collective consciousness made up of representatives from hundreds of different realities, each bringing their unique perspective to the construction of tools that could unite the multiverse itself. They weren't just interdimensional travelers, Sarah said, her voice filled with wonder. They were interdimensional diplomats. They built this technology to create bridges between different versions of reality, to allow communication and cooperation between alternate versions of civilizations across infinite parallel universes. And what happened to them? Dr. Yith asked quietly. Sarah accessed more of the personal logs, following the narrative threads that told the story of the Builder's ultimate fate. What she discovered filled her with both sorrow and hope. They succeeded, she said simply. They completed their mission and moved on to something even greater. The dimensional shipyard wasn't abandoned. It was left behind as a gift. For whoever proved capable of understanding their script and operating their technology. A gift? Kethvar's translator conveyed his confusion clearly. An inheritance, Sarah corrected. They knew that eventually, some civilization would evolve to the point where they could comprehend interdimensional physics and operate reality manipulation technology responsibly. The artifact was left as a test. Anyone who could read the script without being destroyed by it would prove themselves worthy of inheriting the Builder's legacy. Sarah finally turned away from the screen to look at the observation booth. Through the transparent wall, she could see the faces of her colleagues and alien allies, all staring at her with expressions of amazement, concern, and barely contained excitement. The question now, she said with a smile that was equal parts triumphant and terrified, is what we're going to do with the keys to the multiverse. 3 months after Sarah's breakthrough with the alien script, the abandoned research station on Zirion Prime had become the most heavily guarded location in known space. Ships from every major civilization in the Galactic Council maintained constant patrols around the dead planet, while teams of scientists and engineers worked frantically to understand the implications of what humanity had unlocked. Sarah stood in the main control chamber of the dimensional shipyard, watching as massive construction arrays came online for the first time in millennia. The planet-wide machine was awakening section by section, its reality-warping mechanisms stretching and testing themselves like a giant coming out of hibernation. Status report, she called to Dr. Martinez, who was monitoring the activation sequence from a newly constructed control station. Power systems are at 37% and climbing, he replied, consulting readouts that still seemed like magic even after weeks of study. The quantum stabilizers are holding steady, and the dimensional anchors are locked in place. At this rate, we'll have full operational capacity within 6 hours. Sarah nodded, though part of her wondered if they were moving too fast. The technology they were awakening could reshape the fundamental nature of reality itself. Every decision they made would have consequences that rippled across not just their universe, but potentially infinite parallel dimensions. Ambassador Kethvar approached from the communication station, his forearms moving in patterns that Sarah had learned, indicated careful optimism. The Council has reached a preliminary decision regarding operational authority, he announced. Given that humanity was the first species to successfully interface with the artifact, primary control will remain with Earth's representatives. That's surprisingly generous, Dr. Rodriguez observed from her position at the psychological monitoring station. I expected more political maneuvering. Kethvar's translator hummed with what might have been amusement. The decision was not entirely altruistic. Analysis of Dr. Chen's interaction with the control system suggests that the artifact has somehow adapted its interface specifically to human cognitive patterns. Attempts by other species to access the controls have proven unsuccessful. Unsuccessful. Sarah looked down at the alien script interface that only she seemed able to read fluently. Over the past months, other humans had shown varying degrees of success with the system, but none had achieved her level of integration. It was as if the ancient builders had somehow anticipated human psychology specifically, designing their test to be perfectly suited to the chaotic, intuitive way human minds approached complex problems. Any word from the exploration teams? Sarah asked, referring to the small groups that had been investigating other sections of the vast planetary construct. Dr. Yith clicked her mandibles in the Korathi equivalent of excitement. Most significant discovery reported this morning. Team 7 has located what appears to be a completed dimensional vessel in the southern manufacturing sector. The ship appears to be fully functional and equipped for interdimensional travel. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. They had found engineering specifications for the dimensional ships in the artifacts database. but seeing an actual completed vessel would provide invaluable insights into how the technology actually worked. "I want to see it," she said, moving toward the transport platform that would carry her to the southern sector. "Sarah," Dr. Rodriguez called after her, "remember what the psychological profile showed. Extended exposure to the advanced technology has been causing changes in human brain chemistry. We don't fully understand the long-term effects yet. We have that pause. White, 8. It was true." Sarah had been experiencing strange dreams lately. Visions of alternate realities where different versions of herself had made different choices. Sometimes she wondered if the artifact wasn't just teaching her to read its script, but actually integrating her consciousness with the broader interdimensional network the builders had created. But the possibility of danger seemed insignificant compared to the magnitude of what they were discovering. Every day brought new revelations about the builders' technology, each one more remarkable than the last. They had found evidence of communication networks that spanned multiple dimensions, manufacturing processes that could create matter from pure energy, and transportation systems that treated the barriers between realities as mere inconveniences to be bypassed. The transport platform carried Sarah through tunnels that stretched for kilometers beneath the planet's surface. The walls were lined with the same script she had learned to read from the artifact. But here it seemed to serve a functional purpose, rather than just storing information. The symbols pulsed and flowed as she passed, apparently monitoring her progress and adjusting the tunnel's environment to ensure her comfort. When she reached the southern manufacturing sector, Sarah gasped at the sight that greeted her. The chamber was vast beyond imagination, its ceiling lost in shadows that seemed to stretch infinitely upward, and floating in the center of this impossible space was a ship that defied every preconception she had about spacecraft design. The vessel wasn't built so much as grown, its organic curves suggesting a fusion of technology and biology that human engineering had never achieved. It was roughly the size of a city block, but its surface rippled and shifted as if it were alive. Most remarkably, parts of the ship seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, creating visual paradoxes that made Sarah's eyes water if she looked too directly at them. "Incredible," breathed Dr. Patel, the team leader who had discovered the vessel. "The ship appears to be constructed from some kind of programmable matter that can alter its dimensional properties on command. We've detected at least 7 distinct dimensional phases, and there may be more that our instruments can't perceive." Sarah approached the ship slowly, feeling the same sense of recognition she had experienced with the original artifact. The script covering the vessel's hull was responding to her presence, symbols brightening and shifting to create new patterns that seemed almost welcoming. "Has anyone tried to board it?" she asked. "We've been waiting for you, Doctor," Patel replied. The ship's access systems appear to use the same script-based interface as the artifact. None of us could get past the outer hull. Sarah reached out to touch the ship's surface, and immediately the script began to dance beneath her fingertips. An opening appeared in the hull, not a door or airlock, but simply a space where solid matter became permeable to allow her passage. "I'm going inside," she announced, stepping through the dimensional membrane that served as the ship's entrance. The interior of the vessel was even more remarkable than its exterior. Sarah found herself standing in what appeared to be a vast garden, complete with trees, flowing water, and a sky that showed stars from constellations she didn't recognize. But as she moved through the space, she realized that the garden was just one layer of reality within the ship. By shifting her perception, a skill the artifact had somehow taught her, she could see other layers. A control room with interfaces made of pure light, sleeping quarters that existed in folded space, and cargo holds that seemed to contain infinite storage capacity. The ship's central control interface was a masterpiece of the builder's technology. Rather than physical controls, it consisted entirely of floating script that responded to thought and intention. As Sarah approached it, the symbols arranged themselves into patterns she could understand, offering her control over systems she was only beginning to comprehend. "Ship status. Fully operational," she read aloud, her voice echoing strangely in the multidimensional space. "Dimensional drive. Ready for activation." Navigation systems, synchronized with interdimensional beacon network. Warning. Unauthorized dimensional travel may result in temporal paradoxes or reality cascade failures. The warning gave Sarah pause. The ship was essentially offering her the ability to travel to alternate versions of reality. But the risks involved were beyond calculation. A single mistake could theoretically unravel the fabric of existence across multiple dimensions. But as she studied the navigation interface, Sarah began to understand that the builders had anticipated these dangers. The ship's systems included extensive safeguards designed to prevent catastrophic dimensional interactions. More importantly, the navigation network would only allow travel to dimensions that had been deemed safe by the builders' own exploration protocols. Dr. Chen. Dr. Patel's voice crackled through her communicator. Are you able to determine the ship's operational capabilities? It's incredible, Sarah replied, still marveling at the control systems surrounding her. This ship can travel to parallel dimensions, but only specific ones that have been mapped and verified as safe. The builders created an entire interdimensional highway system, complete with traffic regulations and safety protocols. She accessed more of the ship's database, discovering logs from previous journeys made by the builders themselves. The records painted a picture of a civilization that had spent eons exploring the infinite variations of reality, cataloging the differences between parallel universes, and establishing contact with alternate versions of various species. There are logs here of contact with other versions of Earth, Sarah announced, her voice filled with wonder. Dimensions where human civilization developed differently, where we made different choices, followed different paths. The builders were monitoring our species across multiple realities. What were they looking for? Dr. Rodriguez asked through the communicator. Sarah delved deeper into the records, piecing together the builders' long-term objectives. What she discovered was both humbling and inspiring. They were looking for species with the potential to become interdimensional travelers themselves, she said slowly. The builders weren't just explorers, they were teachers and guides, helping younger civilizations develop the wisdom and maturity needed to handle reality-altering technology responsibly. The ship's database showed her records of dozens of species that had been given access to interdimensional technology over the builders' long history. Some had used it wisely, joining the interdimensional community and helping to explore and catalog new realities. Others had misused the power and been quietly isolated until they developed greater wisdom. And now it's our turn, Sarah murmured, understanding finally dawning. The test with the script wasn't just to see if we could read it. It was to see if we would approach unknown technology with curiosity rather than aggression, with cooperation rather than competition. By working together, humans and aliens, we proved we were ready for the next step. Sarah activated the ship's external communication systems, broadcasting her voice to the teams scattered across the planetary construct. Everyone needs to hear this. The builders left us more than just technology. They left us an invitation. The interdimensional beacon network is still active, and there are other civilizations out there, in other dimensions, that are part of a vast community of interdimensional travelers. She paused, looking around at the impossible garden that surrounded her, feeling the weight of infinite realities pressing at the edges of her consciousness. We're being offered membership in something bigger than our universe, a community that spans all possible realities, working together to understand the true nature of existence itself. The response from the various teams was immediate and overwhelming. Voices filled with excitement, apprehension, and wonder flooded the communication channels as the implications sank in. Humanity wasn't just gaining access to advanced technology. They were being invited to join a cosmic civilization that spanned the multiverse itself. What happens now? Dr. Martinez asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah looked at the navigation interface, which was showing her the locations of dozens of parallel dimensions, where interdimensional communities had established themselves. Some were versions of their own universe where Earth had developed differently. Others were realities so alien that her human mind could barely comprehend their nature. Now we learn, she said simply. We explore. We meet our counterparts in other dimensions and discover what humanity becomes when it's not limited to a single reality. We find out what we're really capable of when we stop thinking of ourselves as just one small species on one small planet. She began the startup sequence for the ship's dimensional drive, feeling the reality around her beginning to shift and flex as the vessel prepared for its first journey in millennia. And we prove that the builders were right to trust us with the keys to infinity. As the ship's dimensional drive came online, Sarah felt a sensation unlike anything she had ever experienced. Reality itself seemed to become fluid, possibilities spreading out before her like branches on an infinite tree. She could sense other dimensions pressing against their own, alternate realities where different versions of herself were making similar discoveries, where humanity was taking its first steps into a larger universe that existed beyond the boundaries of space and time. The ship lifted smoothly from its construction bay, rising through dimensional layers that existing physics couldn't explain. Through the viewing ports, Sarah could see the abandoned planet of Zarian Prime falling away beneath them, but she could also see other versions of the same planet where different histories had unfolded, different choices had been made. Initiating first-dimensional transition, she announced, her hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of the moment. Destination: Interdimensional Hub Station Epsilon. Estimated arrival time: now. The ship slipped between the barriers of reality like a fish diving through water, and suddenly they were elsewhere. Else when? In a space that existed between dimensions, where representatives from hundreds of different realities had gathered to welcome humanity to the interdimensional community. As Sarah looked out at the impossible vista of the hub station, with its mix of familiar and utterly alien architectures, she smiled. The ancient script had been more than just a test or a teaching tool. It had been an invitation to transcend the limitations of a single reality and become something greater than humanity had ever imagined possible. And they had accepted that invitation with all the chaotic, intuitive, impossibly optimistic courage that made humans uniquely suited to read scripts that other species found impossible to comprehend. The builders had chosen well.